What if I told you that housewives in the 1950s used cocaine in their cleaning products, stored leftovers in actual lard, and were told by doctors to smoke cigarettes for weight loss? The reality of domestic life 70 years ago was stranger than fiction. These weren't just quirky habits, they were carefully guarded secrets passed down from mother to daughter, printed in women's magazines, and considered absolutely normal. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the bizarre, shocking, and sometimes dangerous world of the 1950s American housewife. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never look at your grandmother's advice the same way again. Let's start our journey in the most unsettling place, the 1950s medicine cabinet. If you thought modern wellness trends were questionable, wait until you hear what housewives were doing to stay energized and slim. First up, amphetamines for housework. That's right, doctors regularly prescribed diet pills containing amphetamines, essentially speed, to housewives who complained of fatigue or wanted to lose a few pounds. Brand names like Dexedrine and Benzedrine were marketed directly to women as mother's little helpers. These weren't underground drugs, they were legitimate prescriptions that doctors handed out like candy. Housewives would pop these pills before tackling their daily chores, giving them superhuman energy to clean, cook, and care for children. The problem? They were highly addictive, caused severe mood swings, and led to widespread dependency. But in the 1950s, if you were a tired housewife, your doctor's solution was simple: take more pills. Then there's the cigarette diet. Major tobacco companies ran advertisements specifically targeting women, claiming that smoking would keep you slim and elegant. One famous Lucky Strike campaign literally said, "Reach for a Lucky instead of a sweet." Doctors appeared in cigarette ads, white coats and all, endorsing brands like Camel and Marlboro. Housewives were told that lighting up a cigarette would curb their appetite and help them maintain that perfect hourglass figure. Magazine spreads showed glamorous women smoking while doing dishes, implying this was the secret to staying attractive for your husband. The health consequences? Completely ignored. Lung cancer rates among women skyrocketed in the following decades, but in the 50s, cigarettes were considered a housewife's best friend. Let's talk about radioactive beauty products. Yes, you heard that correctly. Women applied face creams and cosmetics containing radium because they believed it would give them a youthful glow. Products with names like Thoradia promised to rejuvenate skin using the power of radiation. Some companies even sold radioactive suppositories marketed as energy boosters and health enhancers. The horrifying truth is that women were literally poisoning themselves in the name of beauty, and it would take years before the deadly effects of radiation exposure became public knowledge. And here's one that sounds like a joke, but isn't: tapeworm diet pills. Some desperate housewives would intentionally ingest tapeworm larvae to lose weight. The idea was that the parasite would consume the food you ate, allowing you to eat whatever you wanted without gaining weight. These were sometimes sold as sanitized tapeworms through mail-order catalogs. The reality was catastrophic health problems, including severe abdominal pain, malnutrition, and in some cases, death. But the pressure to maintain a specific body type was so intense that women were willing to harbor parasites in their intestines. Perhaps most disturbing was the casual use of cocaine and morphine in everyday products. Before strict drug regulations, many household items contained substances we now know are highly dangerous and addictive. Coca-Cola famously contained cocaine until 1903, but various tonics, headache remedies, and nerve soothers marketed to housewives in the early to mid-20th century still contained traces of opiates and cocaine derivatives. Women would take these thinking they were simply treating a headache or calming their nerves, never realizing they were developing chemical dependencies. The psychological toll of all this cannot be overstated. Housewives in the 1950s were expected to maintain spotless homes, raise perfect children, look perpetually beautiful, and never complain. When the pressure became too much, instead of addressing the systemic issues or impossible standards, doctors medicated them into compliance. Betty Friedan would later call this the problem that has no name in her groundbreaking book, The Feminine Mystique. The medicine cabinet secrets weren't just strange, they were symptoms of a society that valued women's appearance and domestic performance over their health and well-being. These pharmaceutical nightmares were considered normal, doctor-approved solutions to everyday problems. The idea that housewives needed chemical assistance to fulfill their roles was baked into the very fabric of 1950s culture. Looking back now, it's horrifying to think about how many women suffered unknowingly, believing they were simply doing what was best for themselves and their families. Now let's move from the medicine cabinet to the kitchen, where the secrets get even stranger. The 1950s housewife's approach to food preparation and preservation would make modern health inspectors faint. Let's start with the aspic obsession. If you've never seen a 1950s cookbook, prepare yourself. Everything, and I mean everything, was suspended in gelatin. Ham and banana aspic, tomato aspic with cottage cheese, tuna aspic with hard-boiled eggs. Entire meals were encased in quivering, translucent jelly and served at dinner parties as the height of sophistication. Housewives would spend hours carefully arranging canned vegetables, processed meats, and mayonnaise-based salads in decorative molds, then pour gelatin over the top. The result looked like something from a science experiment gone wrong, but this was considered elegant entertaining. The secret? Most of these dishes tasted absolutely terrible, but admitting it would mean social suicide, so everyone smiled and choked them down. Then there's lard storage. Before widespread refrigeration became standard, housewives preserved cooked food by covering it with a layer of melted lard. Leftover roast chicken? Pour lard over it. Half a pot roast? Seal it in lard. The fat would solidify and supposedly create an airtight seal that prevented spoilage. In reality, this method was a breeding ground for bacteria and food poisoning, but it was passed down as grandmother's wisdom. Many families got violently ill from improperly stored food, but this was just accepted as stomach troubles that everyone dealt with occasionally. Cleaning products were equally terrifying. Housewives mixed their own cleaning solutions using recipes that would be considered hazardous material today. Ammonia and bleach were commonly mixed together, creating toxic chloramine gas that could cause severe respiratory damage. Women would clean their bathrooms with this deadly combination, never realizing they were poisoning themselves. Other popular cleaning hacks included using gasoline to remove stains from clothing, often near open flames or pilot lights. House fires and explosions were tragically common, but the pressure to have pristine white linens was worth the risk. Lead paint was everywhere, and housewives would casually repaint kitchen cabinets and children's furniture without any protection. The bright, cheerful colors that defined 1950s aesthetics came from lead-based paints. Women would inhale the fumes and dust without masks or ventilation, leading to lead poisoning that affected both them and their children. The neurological damage from lead exposure contributed to learning disabilities and behavioral problems in an entire generation, but nobody connected the dots at the time. Here's a secret that's both sad and shocking: the Pyrex casualty rate. Those beautiful, colorful Pyrex dishes weren't always oven-safe, despite being marketed that way. Housewives were told they could take dishes directly from freezer to oven, but this often resulted in spectacular explosions of hot glass and food. Burns and lacerations were common, but women rarely reported these incidents because they blamed themselves for doing something wrong, never questioning whether the product itself was flawed. Food handling practices were downright dangerous. Many housewives still followed Depression-era habits of reusing everything. Meat would be cooked, left out at room temperature for hours during dinner, then stored without proper cooling. Cross-contamination was rampant because the germ theory of disease hadn't fully penetrated domestic advice. Cutting boards were rarely sanitized properly, and the same knife would go from raw chicken to vegetables without washing. Food poisoning was so common it was just considered a normal part of life. The pressure cooker panic was real. These devices were relatively new and notoriously dangerous in the 1950s. Housewives were expected to use them to speed up cooking times, but the early models had poor safety mechanisms. Explosions were frequent enough that women shared horror stories in whispered conversations. Kitchens destroyed, serious burns, meals splattered across ceilings. But admitting you were afraid of your pressure cooker meant admitting you weren't a competent housewife, so women continued using them despite the danger. Perhaps most bizarrely, there was a trend of using DDT as a household insecticide. Housewives would spray this toxic pesticide directly in their kitchens, on countertops, and even in children's bedrooms. There were advertisements showing mothers happily spraying DDT while children played nearby. We now know that DDT is a probable carcinogen and endocrine disruptor, but in the 50s it was considered a miraculous modern convenience. The kitchen and cleaning secrets of the 1950s reveal a darker truth. Housewives were expected to maintain impossible standards with inadequate tools and dangerous products, all while pretending everything was perfect. Finally, let's talk about the social and psychological secrets that housewives kept hidden behind their picture-perfect facades. This is where things get truly dark. The tranquilizer epidemic was in full swing by the mid-1950s. When Miltown hit the market in 1955, it became the first blockbuster psychiatric drug, primarily prescribed to housewives. By 1957, 1 in 3 prescriptions in America was for Miltown or similar tranquilizers. Housewives took these pills to cope with anxiety, depression, and what we'd now recognize as burnout. But here's the secret. They never told anyone. Taking tranquilizers was shameful, suggesting you couldn't handle your womanly duties. So millions of women suffered in silent, medicated isolation, popping pills in bathroom privacy while maintaining their cheerful exterior. The husband's plate ritual was a bizarre priority system that taught daughters troubling lessons. Housewives would prepare elaborate dinners, but the best portions always went to the husband. The crispiest fried chicken, the center cut of roast beef, the largest slice of pie, these belonged to the man of the house by default. Women and children ate what was left. But the secret went deeper. Many housewives barely ate at all, either because there wasn't enough food or because they were trying to maintain their figures. Malnutrition among housewives was common, but never discussed. A woman who complained about being hungry was seen as selfish or neglecting her duties to feed others first. Girdle torture was a daily reality. Those perfect hourglass silhouettes didn't occur naturally. They were achieved through elaborate foundation garments that were essentially instruments of torture. Housewives wore girdles, garter belts, and reinforced bras that restricted breathing and movement. Some women would actually pass out from the constriction, but they'd rather faint than appear in public without proper undergarments. The secret? Many women developed serious health problems, including damaged circulation, digestive issues, and even displaced organs from years of compression. But vanity and social expectations outweighed health concerns. There was an epidemic of what we'd now call domestic violence, but the secret code language housewives used is chilling. Women would tell friends they walked into a door or fell downstairs to explain bruises and black eyes. Divorce was scandalous and often economically impossible, so women stayed in abusive marriages and learned to hide the evidence with makeup and long sleeves. Support systems were non-existent. If a woman complained about her husband, she'd be told to be a better wife, cook better meals, or be more attractive. The psychological damage of victim blaming, combined with actual abuse, created a generation of traumatized women who believed their suffering was their own fault. The secret drinking problem was massive but invisible. While men's alcoholism at least acknowledged, female alcoholism was completely taboo. Housewives who struggled with alcohol addiction would hide bottles around the house, in toilet tanks, inside flour canisters, behind cleaning supplies. They'd drink throughout the day to cope with isolation, boredom, and undiagnosed mental health issues, but always in secret. Neighbors would whisper suspicions, but never confront directly. The stigma was so severe that women rarely sought help, leading to devastating health consequences and intergenerational trauma. Here's a secret that reveals the complete absurdity of the era: the fake social life. Many housewives maintained elaborate pretenses about their social calendars and friendships. They'd describe bridge clubs, volunteer committees, and lunch dates that didn't actually exist, because admitting loneliness meant admitting failure as a woman. The suburban isolation of post-war America left many housewives desperately lonely, but they'd rather invent fictional social lives than admit they had no real friends. The happy pills photograph phenomenon was particularly insidious. Family photos from the 1950s show everyone smiling perfectly, but housewives knew the secret. You took as many shots as necessary to get one perfect image, and if anyone wasn't smiling widely enough, that photo was destroyed. The pressure to present perfect family happiness meant that authentic emotions were literally erased. Sadness, fatigue, frustration, these had no place in the family album or the family narrative. Perhaps the most heartbreaking secret was the diary burning ritual. Many housewives kept private journals where they expressed their true feelings: dissatisfaction, anger, dreams of different lives. But these diaries were dangerous. If a husband found them, it could mean serious consequences. So women developed the practice of periodically burning their journals, destroying the only evidence of their authentic inner lives. They literally erased their own stories to maintain the fiction of the happy housewife. So there you have it, the strange, disturbing, and sometimes horrifying secrets of 1950s American housewives. From amphetamine addictions disguised as diet aids to food preservation methods that would horrify modern health inspectors, from the silent epidemic of tranquilizer dependency to the elaborate social facades that hid profound loneliness and abuse. These weren't just quirky vintage habits. They were symptoms of a society that valued women's appearance and domestic performance over their health, happiness, and humanity. The next time someone talks nostalgically about the good old days, remember these secrets. Progress isn't just about technology and civil rights. It's also about the everyday freedoms we take for granted, like the ability to admit we're struggling without being medicated into compliance, or to eat before our husbands, or to exist without torturous undergarments. What shocked you most about these 1950s housewife secrets? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. If you found this fascinating and disturbing, smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's darkest corners. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. And if you really want to go down the rabbit hole, check out my video on strange 1960s parenting advice that'll make your jaw drop. The link is in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Remember, the past wasn't always better. It was just better at keeping secrets.